Stuart. I genuinely thought I could get that last bit of dinner down before we started. Hello, everybody. Welcome along to your Monday Night Rabble here in the Rangers Rabble podcast. I was not finishing off my dinner there. Nearly choked to death. Tonight I am joined by Lewis and Stuart. And Lewis, as you said to me just before we started, what the hell are we going to talk about?
I have no idea. I honestly have no idea. I've obviously been keeping up with the recent podcasts after the Thursday's games, and it's been hard going trying to g ourselves up for speaking about it and today with Rangers at the minute. But I mean, I suppose it's just talking about the future, innit? Hopefully, better things to come.
Well, if we were ever stuck for something to talk about, the one man we would need on the podcast is Stuart, and Stuart is here. Stuart, how are you? And what the hell are we going to talk about?
Yes, evening all. Happy Easter to everybody. What are we going to talk about? Well, I think obviously there's some bit of news today about the takeover, which I was slightly surprised about because actually when you read it, I don't think it really told us anything more than what we all already knew. So maybe we can have a wee chat about that. I think we obviously need maybe these last 5 games. What we kind of feel, Barry can do, who should be playing in those 5 games, etc. What we've got to make use of these games somehow. We know the season's been an absolute car crash, but we've got to try and at least get something out of these last 5 games. The Old Firm will obviously, I think, take care of itself, just given the nature of the game. But then, what are we expecting from these last 5 games, other than obviously hopefully winning them all, but in terms of personnel playing in them, I think that's quite important. And then obviously, the rumour mills is still going on with the manager as well, isn't it? Who'll be the next manager, and whether or not can you really read anything into these bookies odds at the moment, because somebody sticking a tenner on somebody would probably change it quite dramatically.
Well, there's Stuart just gave us about 2 hours worth of talking points. So
let's get going then, huh?
Well done, Stuart. To everybody watching, tuning in live, thank you, welcome. Please like, share, and subscribe, of course. And get your points in. See if there's maybe a conversation that you've been wanting to have, and everybody's talking about this and that. Get it in the comments, bring it up, we'll discuss it. As long as, of course, if it's Rangers related, of course, then we will bring it up and we will discuss it. Like, share, and subscribe. Excuse me, all that good stuff. And before anybody asks, it's called a quesadilla that I was eating. I've never had one before, and I don't think I'll be having one again. Didn't really enjoy it. Bit plain. I won't tell you what company I got it from, because I approached them about sponsorship and they never got back to me, so I'm not bringing them up. Let's not talk about Sandy Easdale, shall we, Aldo? Don't want folk turning up at my house. But anyway, okay, let's start then, Stuart, shall we? With the takeover talk that has been. By all accounts, the 49ers Investment Group and Mr. Cavenagh have secured that magical 51% that is needed to take over the club and basically be in charge. There was talk of the Easdales as well, Stuart, trying to put blockers on it or whatever it was. It turns out, as we all knew, the Easdales are irrelevant.
Well, certainly when it comes to this deal, it doesn't appear that they're going to have any impact on it. As I said earlier, I was a wee bit, when I read the article, I was expecting a wee bit more. I thought it was already pretty much common knowledge that they'd got to the magic 51%, and that we were just still waiting for all this legal process, which is frustrating. But when you're dealing with multi-millions of pounds, I dare say that legal process is going to take a bit of time, and we just need to grin and bear that and see it through. So look, I think people have been deliberately trying to stir the pot a wee bit, make it, though there's delays, etc. By all accounts, I think if taking a step back and listening to the people who have got the right contacts, etc., looks as if this deal is running to the schedule that they thought it might take. I can imagine it might be quite complicated when you're not just dealing with one person in terms of buying the 51%. You know, it's multiple individuals that you're doing. Some taking their whole shareholding, some you're taking elements of it. I think also understand that in order to get to the 51, there will be a share issue done as well that will the new Cavenagh and the 49ers will snap up, I would say, the vast majority of all those new shares, and that would get them to the 51, which is obviously the real way that they'll then start being able to directly get money into the club and do what they want to do. So it looks positive. I know the chief exec's got a fans forum on Wednesday. I would probably urge people to don't get your hopes up that they start telling us a lot of stuff on Wednesday. There'll be that standard line about you can't say anything until it's all signed and whatever. But it's looking positive. But I still think we're a number of weeks away from it all being done and dusted, Martin.
Yeah, and look, can I just say to the few people in the comments, there's a reason why podcasts. How can I put this nicely? Podcasts who aren't Rangers minded, talk about Rangers all the time because they know that it'll get you to click on and watch. That's why they talk about Rangers all the time. They've not got a clue what they're talking about. They just make stuff up because they know that Rangers fans will click on and listen. Mostly mock, to be fair. But they will click on it. You will click on and listen. That's why they talk about our football club so much. Lewis, what's your thoughts on all this? 49ers, Cavenagh reaching the 51%. Are you happy about it? Are you a bit? Because there is some fans out there who are still a wee bit hesitant about it.
Is that to me, Martin? Sorry, you can't
Yes.
part of that there. Look, it's just I would echo everything that Stuart has said there. And I mean, I was under the impression that it was a bit of a foregone conclusion that the 51% had already been attained in large part. And we've kind of had a end of May date kind of earmarked for when the completion would finally take place. So I mean, it's all very exciting. I personally don't really keep up with the intricacies of any of the financial or the business side of it all because I'm not intelligent enough to dive into it. To be honest, it's just I'm interested in. I am just interested in seeing change at Rangers. We're a bit of a sleeping giant's a bit of an understatement at the minute, and I would just like to enjoy some of the history that you guys have enjoyed, and I think that this is a good step in the right direction in that sense. I just wonder, we obviously Leeds looking like I think they're probably the favourites now to win the championship, and I've known that they're certainly automatic promotion. So you wonder who would be the flagship club in their portfolio, whether it would be us or Leeds, because it's two pretty damn big football clubs.
Does there have to be a flagship? Well,
I mean, I don't know if there necessarily has to be, but I think naturally that there would be one or the other that would maybe take up more priority. There's only going to be a finite amount of attention from the 49ers and Cavenagh towards either Rangers or Leeds United, and it will be a case of if Rangers start to hit the ground running next season, say, unless Leeds are pushing for Europe or England, I would like to think that we would have most of the attention. And listen, you might be right, they might be able to spare their attention to both clubs evenly, but you would think naturally that whatever club is more successful at whatever point, they would then put more interest into that club. But I would always, like I said, I would always like to think that Rangers would be first priority. I do think we're a bigger club than Leeds. I think we've always been a bigger club than Leeds, and unless that financial carrot dangling of Leeds pushing for more than a relegation battle in the Premier League, I think we're just at the back of a quarter final in the Europa League. I think that speaks for itself.
Yeah, and well, I want to come back to this, Stuart, because Lewis mentioned something there that was quite telling, and probably something that me and you and people of our age take for granted when he said, "I want to experience some of the days that you've experienced growing up, which I think for a lot of us, we take that for granted. And can I just address very, very quickly the comments about my hair? It's growing back in, but it's going to grow back in absolutely mentally, right? So once it gets a wee bit longer, I'll get it cut and I won't look, as somebody in the comments put, like a Jakey, right? As soon as it's grown back into a point, I'll get it cut and I'll look as suave as what I ever do. Stuart, I heard a while ago, and I don't know how true it is, but it was from a reasonable source that the takeover was actually done, and they were effectively just waiting a while to announce it. Now I heard that it was going to be announced at the end of April, start of May, right? Which might be true, might not be true. I'm not confirming that. I don't know. But what I would love, Stuart, and I said it on the afternoon ramble today, what I would absolutely love, just for the sheer pettiness of it, 5-3 Scottish Cup final, announce the takeover. Just out of pure pettiness.
Never say never. Actually, it's maybe about time that we start playing some of these games. I'll settle for it just being announced.
Oh, sure. Just out of pure pettiness, it would be absolutely glorious. It would be glorious.
Absolutely. But like I say, I'll settle for it just to be announced. I think you're right. I mean, although I think reading between the lines, like say, multi-million pound deals, there has to be a certain level of due diligence that's done from a legal perspective on that. So, I think it's only right that that's taking time. What I did read today was that I think we're now actually at the stage where if anybody was to pull out of the deal, so whether it was the Americans or whether an existing shareholder was to start saying, no, I'm not going to go ahead with this, with the deal, it'll actually start costing people money. So, again, not that I think there's really been any doubt about this, and I think it has been journalists and other podcasts, etc., trying to just stir the pot. There's now going to be financial penalties if that was to be the case. And I'll be amazed if there isn't already been work done in the background in terms of these guys making their plans and preparations for next season. Whether so who the sporting director is going to be, who that sporting director then starting to think about managerial decisions. What style do they want Rangers to play in? What sort of character is that person going to be? And then all the other things that then go with it, whether it's improvements to stadium, training facilities, etc. I'll be astonished if that's not already happening in the background. Cavenagh, etc., and the 49ers kind of technical directors, it's Stenson, is his name? They're not just coming here to watch 90 minutes of football. There will be discussions ongoing. And would it even be a surprise to anybody that now that actually we're going to be tailing off the end of the season, that actually they start having some discussions with Barry Ferguson, not about him probably being the manager, but what is he experiencing? What is that dressing room like? What are the issues that he's encountered? What's the positives? I think all of that will now start ramping up now that the European adventure is done and dusted. But, there is only that I don't believe that they'll be in a position where, say it's the 31st of May, it gets announced that's it. Right, come the 1st of June, that's the first day that they'll actually start doing some work. That work's already underway. I certainly hope that's the case.
Yeah, listen, of course it would be. And look, Alexander Marshall here, look, Lewis, coming to you, right? I'm coming to you, Lewis, right? Lads, even with the takeover, it still could be 3 or 5 years to really challenge them, need a massive clear out. I don't think, Lewis, necessarily it's going to be 3 to 5 years. But I'm not going to sit here and go, right, okay, as soon as the takeover happens and they put their money in and they start making changes, right, that's it, we're 100% guaranteed to win the league next year. No, I'm not that stupid, but I don't think 3 to 5 years. I think that the first year it should be competitive at least, and then from year 2 we should be saying, right, now we go to win the league.
Aye, I mean it's somewhere in between. It's certainly not going to take 5 years, or if it does take 5 years, then the takeover would probably be deemed a failure for a club like Rangers. But again, it's also probably not going to be successful next year. However, I mean, we looked absolutely miles away for Celtic after 55. You know, we got into the season with Gerrard, we were slightly underperforming and still were like 8 points clear of them in domestic football, and it took a massive collapse from us and a resurgent Celtic side from Ange Postecoglou when he actually got that Celtic side playing, because they didn't start off in the best of terms, Ange and Celtic, but once he got gone, and as I say, our fall off coincided with the two events. It only took a season, and Celtic were back on top. So, and listen, I mean, let's be real. Celtic haven't really been the problem this year. That's not been the issue. Like, we have got a pretty likely opportunity to see a season finishing where we are so far behind them in the league, yet we beat them more times than they have beaten us. So Celtic are not the problem. Europe is not the problem. The problem is finding out a way to dominate domestic football the same way that Celtic have managed to do it for the last decade. And I really don't think it's going to take that much to achieve that. However, the chances of that happening, whatever manager we bring in, if they do achieve that, it is also not a given that we'll continue to succeed in Europe and against Celtic as well. You're probably going to get one without the other the first season, and then the second season it'll be maybe to build on trying to compete with Celtic on a one-to-one level, or competing in Europe as well as dominating the league. So there's a lot of grey areas. It's really, really hard to predict how the season's going to go when you have absolutely no idea who's going to be here. I mean, Stuart made the point at the start of the podcast, like, genuinely, what players do we think are actually going to still be here? I mean, I've got 5 players earmarked that we should build a squad around, and then even they 5 players, one of them's John Souttar, who's 29 now, and isn't got the best fitness record, and then 2 of that 5 are also Mohamed Diamande and Nico Raskin, who might be sold. One of them's Vaclav Cherny, who at this moment in time isn't even a full-time Rangers permanent signing. So you're left with Hamza Igaman, who could also go, and then the rest are either development or potential sales. So everything, and I mean everything about this club, from the bottom to the top, is just up in the air at the minute, and it's exciting, but it's you need to be winning as well.
I think the key, Lewis, to recruitment is going to be absolutely vital. And
Right.
let's be honest, we've spent money over the last few seasons. We've just spent it badly, and that has to change. And if that doesn't change, then yeah, you could be looking at 3 to 5 years before we challenge. But if we can be better in our recruitment, also identifying, as Lewis touched on, a style of play, that allows us to win more often domestically, then yeah, I don't believe the gap is as big as some make it out to be. But that recruitment has got to be better, and so there will be eyes on Coppin, and I think his honeymoon period is now well and truly over. He needs to now start being judged. There has been some successes there, but there is clearly a kind of large percentage where he hasn't got it right. And if he's at the head of that recruitment team, and it's his job to drive that, and from what we learn now, it's going to be more about you're recruiting for the football club rather than recruiting for a certain manager. So gone are the days where Beale will be handed the keys and the checkbook and all that. Well, Coppin now, the scrutiny on him needs to be ramped up, and I'm sure it will be. I think there will be more cash available, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to get the success with it, because as I go back to my point, we have spent money. We've just not spent it very well in recent years. That has to improve. If we can get that right, then I think we can challenge next season.
Oh, I'm not saying that we can't or that we shouldn't be looking to challenge. I'm just saying that for so long now, the expectation from the fans has been go and win the league. but that's not been the expectation for the football club. And I don't think next season that the owners will be saying, our expectation is the manager must win the league, or we're looking at his position. That's all I mean. As supporters, absolutely, we need to be looking at next season and going, regardless of the takeover, we go to win the league. That's Rangers. But business and ownership and everything is so different from just plebs like us. That's all I'm meaning.
I think publicly they should be coming out, and when it all happens, and they should be saying, the aim is to win the title next season.
Mm-hmm.
Now, behind the scenes, there might be a 3-year plan that they have in place, and that plan will obviously involve the football side of it, but it'll be infrastructure, all of those different things that will feed into it. But certainly publicly, I think we should be setting whoever the new gaffer is that challenge of saying there is money available to you and to Coppin, there is money available to you. It needs to be spent wisely. What's the plan here? What is the style? Why are you identifying that player?
Mm-hmm.
What do you feel that they bring to allow us to dominate Scottish domestic fixtures and win them comfortably? Because at the moment we don't do that. It's just not happened on a regular enough basis. So I'd be really disappointed if behind the scenes there is a kind of they're not putting that pressure on a manager, because I think that's the wrong sort of message to give out. These guys, we've already seen season tickets go up. They might go up again once they're in full charge and whatever else. We might see a lot of things go up in price. Fans will be demanding something back for that. Rangers the support have been more than loyal and more than patient. I think though there'll be demands on these guys, and they should be putting demands on Coppin and whoever the new manager is to deliver.
No, yeah, 100% sure. I'm going to come straight back to you, because it was something that Lewis said, and it's something that you've said. That is, well, if you look at the games against Celtic, technically we're not really that far behind them in terms of competing with them wise. But we are, because we can't beat Motherwells, we can't beat Hibs, we can't beat St Mirren's. And again, like Lewis says, there's everybody right now, we could all name 5 or 6 players that we want to leave. And of course, in my opinion, our best player this season has been Vaclav Černý, right? Mm-hmm. I don't think he's going to be sticking about. He might, but he might not, because he's not our player. So actually, we are quite a distance behind Celtic, because we don't have the players currently that can go on a long enough run or be consistent enough to help us win a league title. And there's a lot that we have to change. They don't have to change that much. So I think the actual distance between the two clubs, never mind playing against each other, because and I don't really think that counts when you're still 14 points behind. There is a big distance between the two teams.
But yeah, and by the way, I think we've in this podcast have been very honest about that. I don't think we've tried to pretend, that what we're watching isn't happening. I suppose you could look at it from the point of view, though, it should be easier for us to get that consistency and to be beating the teams, everybody else other than Celtic on a regular basis. That should be easier to achieve. Now, we absolutely haven't done it this season, but we did for a period last season start to develop that kind of mindset. We have seen it before when we last won the title. So it is absolutely doable, in my opinion, to get that consistency. But again, it goes back to that recruitment point of view. I mean, you should really be looking at the 4 Old Firm games and saying, you know what, if you're winning 3 of them, which Lewis has touched on, we've got the potential to do. We should be league champions.
Yeah, 100%.
And we're not, and that's because we've been massively inconsistent and have underperformed. And there could be whole reasons, mentality, whatever it may well be. I think there'll be a multitude of reasons that might be that could be for that. But I think I don't think that's an impossible ask, even with the amount of changes that we'll need to go through for the next season to say, do you know what we expect? Yes, you will always get the odd result. That's going to happen. But actually, there's an expectation here that we win the vast majority of the games that we play domestically. I don't think that's a big ask.
100%. I don't know if any used to agree, and obviously, Lewis, I'll bring this to you first. DKA, Fernie has been pish. He's not consistent. I hate to disagree so vehemently with fellow Rangers fans, but that's probably the worst comment I've seen tonight.
I certainly don't agree with that. I think Vaclav Cherny's probably been the opposite, inconsistent, and that's in a very.
So that would be consistent.
Aye, that would be consistent. He's managed to be consistent in a very inconsistent Rangers side. So it's even more impressive when you consider the fact that if he was in a better performing Rangers side, his numbers might have been even better. And you're talking about a winger and a right winger, by the way. I mean, this is the first real right winger we've had since Daniel Candeias, and even Daniel Candeias was right-footed. So you're talking about it's a long time since we've had a left-footed right winger that's performed to that level. And this is a player that's probably going to exceed the 30 goal involvement mark, and 20 of that being goals scored. I mean, gone are the days of I love him to death, but Ryan Kent scoring 7 goals a season. And even last season, I mean, we had Abdallah Sima who had put up pretty damn similar numbers, and we should have fought tooth and nail to bring somebody like that back to the club. And I know you said that, on your previous point there, Martin, you don't think he'll stick around. I'm trying to be pretty hopeful that Vaclav Cherny might be a bit of a statement signing.
I hope so.
Because I think they need to come in and show the Rangers fans that they've got something that the previous ownership don't have, and that is finances. And we need to start flexing it a wee bit next season. And I think a Vaclav Cherny permanent signing would be, quintessential. It would be perfect to start the season off. A guy that we've seen already perform. He's at the absolute peak age-wise. A few niggly injuries, but you hope that just subsides with him playing more regular football, because he didn't come here playing regular football, which a lot of people forget. He wasn't playing regularly the season prior to coming to Rangers, and I just think it would be absolutely ideal if he came. It would solve a massive problem area for this Rangers side. And like I said, if the new ownership want to get the fans excited, I would like to think that would be maybe a statement they could make.
100% Scousher of the year. 100%.
Just 2 things on Cherny, Martin, sorry, quickly. One, as I've said before in this podcast, even when he's had poor games, he's contributed because he pops up with an assist or a goal. And at times where maybe his performance level hasn't been at that level, I think it is because we've put far too much. We're almost demanding, right, Cherny's going to have to do something. And we've asked him to go to the well time and time again. When have we really been in a position where we said, you know what, Vaclav, right, it's 55, 60 minutes, off you come, have a wee seat in the bench. We're constantly asking him to go to the 95th, 96 minutes because we've found ourselves 2 goals down, and he's needed to pop up with something. So I think he has been our player of the season. Can you imagine if we didn't have him? Jesus.
Yeah. And again, I'll repeat myself. Some of us were very wrong at the start of the season, maybe after an Old Firm loss.
By the way, we talk about mentality. I think he's shown a bit of mentality, by the way. Because that bit where the fans were on him, he'd missed that sitter against Leon. It looked as if his head had gone. And I think I said this before. We had a chat, Martin, on one of these podcasts about he did a press conference, and he actually opened up about how he felt he struggled to deal with that miss. He wasn't sleeping at night. The personal impact that had. Some of the things he was seeing on social media. Well, he's came back. And as you say, he's answered a few critics with how he's returned. So I think he deserves quite a bit of credit in that front.
No, listen, he 100% does. And listen, see when I say something negative about a Rangers player and it comes back to bite me on the arse or whatever, I'm delighted. I don't like being bit in the arse, right? But I'm delighted because that means that they've been successful and it proves that I know absolutely not what I'm talking about. Question here, and I'm going to go to Lewis with this first because this is up Lewis's wheelhouse, right? And I know that Lewis is going to be excited by this question. Something that, again, we spoke about on today's afternoon rabble, but interesting to get Lewis's thoughts on it. I mean, jump in if you want, right? I mean, you can do what you want. Would anyone on the pod be in favour of Steven Gerrard returning? Lewis.
I mean, I wouldn't. I would not. I don't know. I don't think he's the absolute pinnacle of what we could achieve in a manager. Certainly, looking at his recent tenure in Saudi Arabia and the Premier League, you know, with Aston Villa. I mean, what he done with Aston Villa was very, very poor. They were seriously close to relegation, and then you see the difference when a genuine world class manager and Emery comes in, and it's, you know, a few additions here and there, but the spine of that team is pretty similar to what Steven Gerrard had at his disposal. And, you know, you're talking, that's a team that have just got to a Champions League quarter final, whereas he was sitting in 17th place in the Premier League. And I discount the Saudi Arabia stuff. Like, let's be honest, anybody, player or manager who goes there, their time really needs to be null and void for me. It's a money grabbing opportunity, and especially the club he went to. I don't even think they're one of the top 5 or even maybe even in the top 10 in Saudi Arabia. So certainly a money grabbing opportunity for Steven Gerrard. But when you look at how he performed at Rangers, I mean, he's the best manager we've had since coming back up, and it would be quite an easy transition compared to getting a completely new manager. But at the same time, that could also bring problems that if he doesn't perform, he might get stuck quicker than if a completely fresh-faced manager comes into the club. And I don't know if Steven Gerrard's name would be as high on the odds if he didn't have the previous work at Rangers. So that's
the only reason he's been linked.
Exactly. So I think that could be taken into consideration if we are trying to go for the absolute best possible option. It was with a heavy heart that I would say Steven Gerrard is probably not the optimum choice here. However, I mean, the rest of the choices are either way too unlikely for me or worse than Steven Gerrard. Like, Jose Mourinho is one of the greatest managers of all time, and he probably would get a decent bit out of this Rangers squad for a year or two, but he presents some serious long-term problems. Like, Jose Mourinho is a cancer at football clubs in his last decade or two. You know, he's really struggled after his time at Real Madrid, and again, I mean, who else is that? Everybody else is too unlikely for me, or is worse than what Gerrard would be.
Well, I mean, the truth is, Stuart, that we don't know who the new owners will be looking at. We don't know what avenue they're going to go down. They could pluck some obscure manager from out of nowhere that none of us have ever heard of, or they could go with a lot of what the bookies are saying. Now, I said it today, and I'll say it again. The bookies' odds right now, I don't think that we can take any notice of them, because I mean, like you said earlier, you know, somebody sticks a fiver on somebody, they go to the top of that list, right? That's just the way the odds are working right now. Would it be lazy ownership to bring Gerrard back?
So the thing that intrigues me about this is who's making the decision, because we've been told we're appointing a sporting director, so it should be the sporting director that appoints the manager, or, you know, presents the list and says this is the candidate that I believe we should go for, and then they go. So I think that's an intriguing bit of it in terms of how does that dynamic work. It has, and if we are going down the sporting director approach, they need to be in. There is no point in appointing a manager, then appointing a sport director, and then the sport director said, well, I wouldn't have picked him, you know, because that just doesn't make any sense. So that's one bit of it. Would it be lazy? I'm not sure I would call it lazy, but I think there's an element of, I think people have a sense that these guys would want a name as such. And again, maybe that's just talk. Maybe, you know, we don't actually know if that's the case, but that seems to be the feeling that people think, you know, it'll be, they'll want a big name. So Lewis has talked about maybe Czerny could be a kind of marquee signing. Well, maybe actually we've just arrived and here's a marquee kind of manager. So would Gerrard fit that bill? Yeah, because I knew this question would come up. So I was kind of, before we came on, I was trying to jot down, what do we think the pros of Gerrard are and what do they think the cons?
Well, he's won a league. He knows the league.
Yeah.
He was
Stature.
Yeah, who the type of players that he can bring.
Players. There were certain players that he brought in. I don't think would have came to Rangers if it wasn't for the fact that Steven Gerrard was the manager.
And also, I suppose one massive, and not that we really need it for this season because we've already discussed it, but he had started to work out Brendan Rodgers.
Yes.
Just before also, Brendan Rodgers left.
That stature as well when it comes to the media took no shite from them. They were actually a bit terrified of him. And, you know, whereas you felt with Clement and stuff like that, okay, there was a second language element to it as well, but, you know, he would maybe go down, find himself digging a hole for himself by saying certain things. I think Gerrard, massively media trained, etc., handled that side of it. The cons would be, his recent roles, he hasn't done it. He didn't. Okay, 55 was an amazing experience, but we should have won a treble that year.
Yeah.
Well, then,
or at least a double. At least,
yeah. But with Celtic being the bin fire that they were and being knocked out of both cup competitions early, I think there's an expectation that Rangers should at least be winning one of those trophies, if not both of them. So there was missed opportunities there for us at times. Yeah, he had started, I think, figuring out Lewis is spot on. I don't think we'll lose that league if Gerrard hangs around. I think, you know, regardless of what Celtic were doing, I think Gerrard gets us over the line and we win that league title. So would it surprise me if it happens? No. Am I ecstatic about it? I'm not sure. Maybe I would. Again, it's about, I'm more interested about saying, right, we're going with this manager because this manager has a style of play that we believe can win us football games in Scotland. And at the moment, we've appointed managers in Van Bronckhorst and Clement who I think decent managers had figured out Europe but didn't figure out the domestic game and struggled with it. So that sporting director and style of football is really important to me.
Yeah. No, I get that, and there's a lot of talk of sporting directors. Lewis, the one name, the main name that I see flying about all over the place is Davy Weir. I think obviously the job that he's done at Brighton. It wouldn't surprise me if there was some top teams in England sniffing about Davy Weir to go and take over at their clubs, Lewis. Is that something that you can see Rangers managing to pull off? Can we convince Davy Weir to leave the riches of England to come back home to Scotland?
Do you know, it's funny because when we were having that conversation there, I was thinking about Barry Ferguson, and I think, you know, 95% of the fan base, especially after Thursday now, are in agreement that he cannot in any circumstance be appointed the Rangers manager. He is just not good enough in that role. Just put simply, he's a legend. He'll never ever be anything other than a legend. I mean, the job he's had to take up, all credit to him, but in just terms of ability, he's no the required level to be Rangers manager. No, I don't see any reason why Barry Ferguson could not be appointed elsewhere in the football club. Now, listen, I don't know how much education David Weir had to go through to become. I think it's technical director. I don't know the difference between technical director and sporting director. To me, they sound very, very similar roles.
I think technical director deals with like hiring and firing of different departments from within a football club, whereas a sporting director focuses purely on
the football side.
I could be completely wrong with that. I played Football Manager a wee bit, Lewis, but I can't remember.
Aye. Well, whatever Davy Weir does, as I say, I don't know what education he went through in order to attain that role, or it was just learning on the job type stuff. Because former professional footballers, especially if they're given roles like that in former clubs, they're fast forwarded a wee bit. They're fast tracked to their positions, and I think Barry Ferguson's knowledge of Rangers is maybe too valuable to just let him go, and I don't think he'll.
Well, he already had an ambassador's role, Lewis. He was already at the club.
Aye, but I mean something that has, a role that has an impact and possible decision making. It doesn't need to be something as high as a technical director or a sporting director, but his views on Rangers, I think, are too valuable to let go. And I don't. The reason I'm suggesting Barry Ferguson because I don't think Davy Weir will be possible. As you say, I think he'll be swayed by other teams elsewhere in Europe or in England, because he's been part of one of the best backroom staffs in Europe over the last decade. I mean, the revolution at Brighton, and it started off with Graham Potter, who set it up perfectly for a Serbia to come in and take it further, and Davy Weir has been in the background of all of that. So unless he loves Rangers that much that he's going to come back, I think financially it's quite unlikely, and that is why I would maybe explore the possibility of asking Barry if he would like to take up a role similar to that. Again, it doesn't need to be that. We should maybe be looking for somebody more qualified, but I would like to see Barry Ferguson involved in some capacity with Rangers that involves decision making at any level.
By the way, Stuart,
still have offers from other teams in Scotland.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I think clubs will have looked at particularly how he's handled himself.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can. I think he did get his substitution the other night. I thought was absolutely baffling and stuff like that. But I think how he's came across and handled himself, I think he's probably impressed quite a few club chairmen out there who might be willing to take a wee shot.
He's not at that. I think that proved it in Thursday night, Stuart. No, and look, it's not because we got beaten.
No.
Bilbao were a better team. A couple of decisions went against us. Our players, by and large, aren't good enough for the quarter-final of a Europa League. Let's be brutally honest.
Agreed.
But like you say, it was those decisions that he made in the critical moments of the game that, for us in hindsight, because we're not football coaches, we're not managers, but just in hindsight, you go, well, maybe, a Jurgen Klopp, a Jose Mourinho and Ernesto Valverde, they're not making those same decisions.
Agreed. But then you can sway that round. They might look at they'll look at that away performance in Turkey, where he got his tactics absolutely spot on that night, and that was an absolutely brilliant Rangers away performance in Europe. So
yeah, but he's never moved from those tactics since he got it right once, and you have to be able to evolve,
adapt a wee bit, yeah. But look, he's been thrown a kind of tough card with injuries and stuff like that, particularly during games. Constantly having to change things about. So I just think there might be club chairman looking about. I'd like to see Barry involved in the club. It's not going to be as manager, but I think Lewis is touching on something about his passion for our football club, what he knows about it.
The Jimmy Bell role, possibly. Obviously not as kitman, but what Jimmy Bell brought to the football club.
But could he be part of? Maybe he wouldn't want to do it, Cavenagh. Now he's had a wee taste of it, but somebody coming in, whoever the new guy is, having a Barry Ferguson in that coaching setup, that could be very useful. He might not want to do that, maybe he might just think, actually, I've enjoyed this experience, but I was really enjoying the ambassadorial role I was doing. He might want to, who knows? It's Barry Ferguson will have, I think, a few options, but I wouldn't be opposed to Barry being part of a new coaching setup in some way, because I think he's got stuff to offer.
By the way, I will just say this before we finish up. For all those people for many years who have shouted about Derek McInnes, we cannot, bring in a manager who's going to potentially get a team relegated
No.
in our league. That can't happen. Even if they stay up through the playoffs, we cannot be looking to bring in a manager who's done really, really poorly this season. And to be honest, I think he's mainly got away with it this season, Derek McInnes. There's never once been is Derek McInnes' job under threat. I've never heard that once this season. But I don't want, and we'll just finish up on this, Lewis. I don't want that man's name mentioned near the Rangers job just now.
No. I mean, he had his opportunity, and I'm one of the few people that maybe are slightly more forgiving on that situation. I think there was a time that he was of a good enough quality of manager to manage Rangers, but he didn't take the chance when he was at that level, and he is now nowhere near that level. And just to touch on that in a more general sense, I know Ian, for example, has always been quite vocal about the fact that we maybe need a British manager, and I can't help but think that just is probably unlikely to happen unless it's Steven Gerrard coming back, because British managers, unfortunately, unless you're Eddie Howe at the moment, are just they're not of a good enough quality. No, there's none, and I mean, I think is it Liam Rosenell, the former English player? He's managing somebody.
He's in
League One and that.
Switzerland or something like that, or something.
I thought it was somewhere in France, but anyway, he's doing pretty well. But I mean, even something like that would be a massive risk, because I'm pretty sure that's his first managerial role. And like I said, you go further down the list, and it's getting pretty low level a manager. I mean, I think I've said this before, and I don't think we're capable of attracting them anymore. But I would have went and tried to get the Bodo Glimt manager. I just don't think that's possible now. I think he'll actually end up at Tottenham unless Spurs win the Europa League. I think if Ange departs, I think Bodo Glimt.
I think he could be departing pretty soon. It's 2-0 to Forest.
Is that really?
Aye.
Oh wow, man, that's a crazy fall off. But as I say, he would have been ideal. Style of football, a fresh face, somebody that the fans would give a chance to, because he's got a bit of a track record, but he's not somebody that brings baggage like a name like Steven Gerrard. He would have been ideal, but I don't think we're capable of attracting him.
I'm going to just ask you this, Stuart, and then we're going to end the show. From Charles, channel member. What was Southgate?
No chance.
Again, so I go back about style of football, and I'm not so sure Gareth Southgate brings a style of football that sees us winning domestically comfortably all the time. So I would be potentially in the Muscat camp, because I think he would play a style of football that would see us win games fairly comfortably up here. But no, I wouldn't be after a Southgate. And I think, by the way, Southgate is sitting there waiting patiently to get a job down south. That's as clear as day that he's just sitting there. He's had a nice wee holiday now. He's doing some work for UEFA and whatever else. Mm-hmm. He'll then the crazy summer where people will move, sackings will happen, whatever else. Southgate will then start getting linked with those jobs, and Broughton will get one. I just don't see him coming up north of the border.
He wouldn't have dropped Butland, would he? And there's Charles backtracking. Charles is backtracking. Southgate is a joke, by the way. Sure it was, Charles. I know. Could you imagine a reaction after this? If Southgate was our manager? Oh man! Right, folks. That will do us there. The plan moving forward, because I've done my research, and the optimal time for a podcast for viewerships, for the amount of people who want to watch, for the enjoyment of the shows, is between 40 and 42 minutes. So we've went a wee bit over that, but we had Stuart on. That was always going to happen. So we're going to aim for the 40, 45 minute mark moving forward, so that because we put out that much content, just going to hit you by an hour every single show. People don't have that much time. So I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks to Lewis and Stuart for joining me.
Cheers.
Research my boss. Look it up. But listen, thank you everybody for joining us. Please make sure.
Is Gallant asking you to research his boss? I'm not sure.
I think that's exactly what Gallant means. I think that's exactly what he means, and it's shocking behaviour, by the way.
Absolutely.
Give me your address. But yeah, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. As always, it does greatly help the channel. The more likes, the more likes that you give us, folks, the more it helps spread the word about the old YouTube sphere. And a big thank you to Mortgage Haven UK as well for sponsoring tonight's shows. Go and check the guys out. Links in the description. So thank you, Lewis. Thank you, Stuart. And to everybody, we shall speak very soon. We are back, of course, tomorrow at 12:30 for your afternoon rabble. So do join us then. And if you haven't already, go and watch or listen to the women's show that was on before we came live as well. So thank you very much, folks, and we shall speak very, very soon.